1. So this happened to our neighborhood when I was about 10, I would say. We lived in a super nice subdivision on a ridge near Marina. The houses were not all right on top of each other due to how the land was, and our house was one of the ones that was not right next to the other houses. Our house backed up to a lot of woods that I used to play in. Our neighborhood was plagued one year by a peeping Tom. My mom had talked to some neighbors and several people had noticed a guy creeping about in backyards or looking in windows, etc. One neighbor said she and her husband had another couple over for dinner, and when the ladies went out in the backyard, down to the woodpile to get more firewood, they noticed a man standing just inside the woods staring at them. They ran to get the husbands, but he was gone at that point. So we were on the lookout. One night I was in bed and my bed was opposite the window in my room. Our house was mostly all on ground level, but my bedroom window was higher from the ground. However, there was a little ledge there under the window. I used to use that ledge to climb in and out of the window for fun. I even put a slide under the window once and would slide out the window. So one night I am in bed and I wake up for some reason. I look at the window and the floodlights were on in the backyard, and I clearly saw the outline of a man's shoulder and head in the window, like he was standing on that ledge just trying to look in. I scream and get my parents, and of course, he is gone by the time they get there. My mom tended to believe me, but my dad said I just dreamed it. I made my dad search the entire house, though, before I would go back to sleep. The reports came in from neighbors that the boats down at the marina were getting broke into. My guesses said Peeping Tom was breaking into the boats for food or to sleep, etc. Well, it all came to a head one night, and lucky us, we were the family that got the worst of it. Our house was like one level on top and then had a basement. While the master bedroom had these huge windows that went all the way to the ground. They could even be opened and just have this screen. You turned the handle and they opened out. My parents were lax in security, and they would leave the dang window open while they slept if the weather was nice. So my dad was gone at night, which was not abnormal for him. He was gone at night a lot, which perhaps Peeping Tom knew if he had been watching us. My mom was asleep in her bed, which was right next to those big fold-out windows which were open. She likes to sleep with the TV on. So she said she kept hearing leaves crunching and she thought it must have been something on the TV. Then she finally realizes the sound is coming from outside the window, literally like a foot and a half away. She jumped out of the bed and ran and turned on the floodlights out front. And there in that window was the outline of a man. Literally all the guy had to do was kick the screen and step into the house. It was that simple. We did have an alarm system, so my mom runs and hits the panic button, and the alarm goes off. She said the guy bolted. I was asleep in my bed while this is going on, and wake up to hearing an alarm, and the cops arrive shortly after. The cops were too lazy to go into the woods looking for him. He ran into those woods behind our house. They did take an unmarked car and drive around to the other side of the woods to see if they could catch him when he came out the other side. But of course, they never found him. But maybe the guy almost getting caught was enough for him, because after that night, the Peeping Tom was not seen again in our neighborhood. I suppose he moved on. But not before he literally scared the living daylights out of my mother and me. The lesson this incident has taught me is never sleep with the windows open. Ever. 2. In 2011, I studied abroad in Voronezh, Russia for 4 months. We went out drinking pretty much every weekend because they don't ID over there. Our group was pretty large, 13 people from various American universities. But this night we had a smaller group, about 8 people, 3 guys and 5 girls. We got done at whatever bar we were at and went outside. While standing and waiting for the crosswalk light, one of the guys in our group notices a Russian guy standing fairly close to our group and listening to us. We were talking in English louder than we probably should have been. This guy, Nate, looks over and says hello to the eavesdropper in Russian. And it comes off pretty arrogant sounding. The guy just kinda nods and smiles. Then the crosswalk light changes and we start walking. There was a certain corner where we'd all split up into smaller groups to go to our respective areas of the city. As we're getting close to it, I look behind us and notice this Russian guy from outside the bar walking a little ways behind us. He didn't look threatening, and it's very possible he could have just been headed to the same area of the city as us. But I got a bad feeling. It's hard to explain. We get to the corner and split up, and I mention to a couple of friends that I think this guy's following us. We hang out for a minute, and sure enough, he hesitates until he sees which small group doesn't have a guy walking with them, which of course was ours, consisting of me and my friends Ellen and Amy. We call Nate, tell him what's going on, and ask him to come walk with us. He tells us to stay on the corner where we split, and he'll be back after he makes sure the girls he's walking with get to their apartment. While we're waiting, Russian guy is also staying on or near the corner, trying to look like he's got a reason to be there. After a couple of minutes, he turns right and walks a few feet down the street, then turns right again into what looks like an entrance to something, maybe an apartment building, but we can't tell what it is from where we are, and can't remember from walking past it before. We're still waiting on the corner for Nate when Russian guy comes back out of wherever he was and goes back to the corner. My friend Ellen has an idea. We wait at the crosswalk for the light and act like we're going to cross. He does the same. When the light changes, we take a couple steps and he starts walking across. Right when he does, Ellen kneels down and acts like something's wrong with her shoe. Russian guy realizes what's happening about halfway through the crosswalk, but can't turn around for no reason. Nate gets back right around this time and starts walking with us towards our apartment complexes. Two things happen. First, we walk by where Russian guy turned into earlier. It's the front of some government building that is very obviously closed at this late hour, which means he was using the little corner there to wait until we walked past, to get behind us again. Second, even though he's on the other side of the street now, he keeps even with us. We go one way, he stays parallel. We turn around and go the other way, he does the same. I honestly forget how long this lasted, but it felt like hours. Finally, when he's distracted with something, we quickly cross the street and duck into an alleyway. We hide there behind a set of steps while Nate keeps watch. He told us the Russian guy walked back and forth past the entrance to this alley 3 or 4 times before he finally gave up. We realized that this alley was a shortcut from the street we were on to the one we needed, so we hurried through and finally got home safe. I stayed with Ellen and Amy that night because my host family's apartment was another block and a half away, in pitch-black streets with no streetlights. After this, I've become extremely situationally aware even at home. It saved my ass once, and although I hope I don't need it again, I'm taking no chances. We have no idea what that guy wanted, although he always kept one hand in his jacket pocket, so he probably had a weapon of some kind in there. So, creepy Russian guy that chased us for an hour, let's not meet again. 3. This happened to me about 3 months ago. A little background about myself. I sadly suffer from chronic pain from a back injury. I have had operated on 3 times. Most of the time I deal with it and live my life. But every few years it starts to really get to me. I go into a bad depression, stop talking to my family, and generally turn into a hermit. When this happens, my family gets worried I am going to hurt myself. I have no idea why. I never made an attempt or even said I was planning to. And they send me to the psych ER, at which point they usually put me on a 5150. For those who don't know, that means 3-day hold. And send me off to the local psych ward. None of this has really bothered me before. I have good insurance, so the place they send me is basically like a hotel. where you can't have shoelaces or touch each other. When they wheel you in, that is the worst part. You're strapped to a gurney, and, like me, if you come in the middle of the day, you are wheeled right through the day room, where all the other patients get to stare at you coming in. This might be a good time to describe myself. I'm male, a little over 6'2" and around 285 pounds, with tattoos covering both arms, and since I've been depressed for months, my beard and hair are out of control, and I look like a generic biker. So I generally don't have anyone ever trying to mess with me. I'm very friendly, but unless you know me, I don't look like it. As I've been through all this a couple times before, I know the gist of what is going to happen. They take all my info, make sure I have no laces or anything with strings, and show me to my room. This psych ward is co-ed, but roommates can only be of the same sex. It's also low security, meaning everyone in here is supposedly non-violent. My only issue with this place is they have people like me who have no mental illness, and are just going through a hard time mixed in with all the different levels of people. But in the past 2 visits here, I have never had a problem with anyone, and I was hoping I would just do my 3 days and be done. They send me to my room, and the nurse says I'll be roommates with Tim. She starts to say something along the lines of, he's a nice guy. Which of course made me a little wary, but we're in a psych ward, everyone in here has some issues. These rooms are basically like any crappy motel room, except a little bigger. 2 beds, a bathroom that annoyingly doesn't have a full door, 1 desk, and each patient gets their own dresser. It's 3 PM and Tim is sound asleep. Which in here isn't that weird, everyone is on different meds that knock them out, or they just have weird sleep habits, so I don't think anything of it. Matter of fact, after spending hours in the ER and another couple of hours getting all signed in, here I am dead tired myself, and decide to fall asleep, which I do almost instantly. No idea how long I slept, but when I wake up it's pitch black outside, and only the little floor light that you can't turn off is giving the room some light. Tim is sitting wide up on his bed and doing the psst sound. "What's up, man? I'm Brian. Would have said hi earlier, but you were asleep. Trying to be friendly as possible since it's just easier to get along with everyone in places like this." "Yeah, I try to sleep as much as possible, so I don't have to interact with any of the demons." This should have been a giant red flag and my cue to go ask for a new room, but Tim was much smaller than me, and they search you when you come in, so I had no reason to fear him. So I decided to make conversation with him about said demons, which I found out were all the nurses and doctors to him. After talking to him about this and that for a while, I let him know I'm still really tired and need some more sleep. At which point he tells me, "Okay, and it's nice to finally have a fellow human as a roommate." I took this as a sign that he was okay with me and I didn't have to sleep with one eye open. Wake up really early for breakfast since I haven't eaten in 24 hours and go sit down. Tim comes out and sits with me. Besides referring to the nurses and doctors as demons, he seemed pretty normal, chatted about normal things for a while until he suddenly stops talking and is just staring at something behind me. "You see her? That's Jessica. She's an angel." I turn around to see a very gorgeous girl who looks to be in her low 20s, maybe even 18 or 19. She waves and says hi to Tim, and pretty much everyone else in the dining room area seems to be one of those very bubbly girls who goes out of her way to be super nice to everyone. When I look back, he's staring at her a little too much, and I snap my fingers. "Hey man, don't freak her out." He gave me a very confused look, like I had said the most absurd thing in the world to him, and got very quiet after that. Honestly didn't think anything of it as I had my own shit to deal with. Rest of the day was the usual in a place like this. Go to meetings, talk to your doctor, take your meds. But the majority of the time you are just bored out of your mind. The TV gets 4 channels. Even if one of them was HBO, it was always hit or miss. So spent the majority of the time just reading books in the day room. While I'm reading my book, Jessica comes up to me, sits down next to me, and introduces herself. And starts to ask me all kinds of questions about my tattoos, what I'm reading, just basically my life story. Like me, she was basically just a normal person having a hard time. No mental illness to speak of, just had bad anxiety that caused her to have panic attacks, mainly since she just started college, and couldn't deal very well with the pressure. We ended up talking for a few hours, and I didn't even think about it until after, but Tim walked past us over and over and over. A lot of people did laps in this place to pass the time, so I really thought nothing of it. I later learned he was basically staring a hole through the back of my head the whole time he walked past me. After talking to Jessica for a while, I tell her I'ma go take a shower before dinner, and we can catch up more later. Like I said before, the bathrooms in this place only have half doors, like an old West saloon door, but solid. So when I get out, I can see Tim's legs and socks under the door. "What's up, man? Do you need to use the bathroom?" "I'll be just a minute, just gotta change." He doesn't say anything and just stands there. "Dude, back up, will you? You're freaking me out a little." I can hear him breathing, like, really fast and hard now, and these doors don't lock. He could just push it open if he wanted to. "Dude, you need to back up. I need to come out." And this is when he starts screaming at me, "You're Satan! You're Lucifer!" over and over. I am really freaking out at this point. If I open this door and beat the shit out of this guy, it's going to be me who gets a shot in the ass and put into the quiet room. But I don't know what else to do, and even though he is screaming as loud as he can, no nurses seem to be coming out. The doors to the rooms in this place are very thick. Pretty sure it's because patients scream in the middle of the night a lot, and they don't want other patients being woken up, which is a nice policy, but it's really putting me into a bind right now. After what seems like 10 minutes but was probably closer to 1, and just as I'm getting ready to reenact the bathhouse scene from Eastern Promises, he stops and leaves the room. I get dressed and instantly go find a nurse to tell them what has just happened. I had no idea what they said to him, but they immediately put me into another room. I don't see him at all during this time or for the rest of the night, but I am legit freaked out. No one has ever screamed at me or cornered me or anything like this before, and I can't sleep at all that night. Since they don't have clocks, I have no idea what time it is when I hear him from the day room, where the nurse's station is. "Where is he? Why isn't he coming back to sleep?" Same tone he was using when he was screaming at me in the bathroom. I crack my door just a bit, and I can hear the nurse talking to him. "You'll see him in the daytime and can talk to him then. Go back to bed." "But I have to see him tonight. It's an emergency." This goes on for another 30 seconds before security finally gets there. I can hear a scuffle, but no way in hell was I going out there to see what was going on. I can hear him yelling still, but I can't hear what he's saying, and eventually it starts to fade. He's still yelling, but they're taking him somewhere else. I figured just to the quiet room, which is on the opposite side of the ward from where my room was. Needless to say, even with him supposedly put in the quiet room, I laid awake the entire night. Morning comes and my doctor is already there, which I found really weird since I usually only saw him well after dinner time. He calls me into the interview room to talk as soon as he sees me, and basically asks me all my entire interaction history with Tim. I go over everything, and at the end of it, he tells me not to worry. Tim has been transferred to a different hospital, but he says it by name. I've lived around here all my life, so I know the hospital he named is very hardcore, the kind of place where they lock you in a room most of the day. I feel a little bad since I know he just thought I was stealing his angel, and was just yelling at me. Nothing too bad. But whatever, it's also nice to know I won't have to hit some poor guy in the face for creeping me out too. I finish my stay and I actually feel a lot better about everything. Pain is being better managed and I'm ready to stop being a hermit. My grandma comes to pick me up, and I think we're ready to leave, but Doctor is there again really early, and my grandma is giving me this look that freaks me out a little. I'm thinking they are going to make me stay longer. Once again, we go into the interview room. This is where they tell me what really happened that night, which they didn't want me to know before until I completed my treatment. That night, Tim came out over and over again to ask the nurse when I was coming to bed. This nurse just kept telling him that he'd see me in the morning without ever telling him I had switched rooms. Apparently this had gone on for hours before he finally started screaming about it. When he screamed about it and security came, he was moved to the quiet room and given a shot to knock him out. The nurse thankfully called Tim's doctor and told him the situation, and his doctor said they'd better move Tim to the medium security wing, which was just upstairs for a few days till I left. When they went to gather Tim's clothing and other supplies, they found a 7-inch piece of metal he broke off from the table in the TV room. The TV room has a camera, but it also has windows where you can see the nurses' station, which didn't always have nurses sitting at it. So my guess is he waited till they left, and worked on it till he broke it off. I am 99.99% certain me asking to change rooms is what saved me from being stabbed to death while I slept, and the doctors agreed, which is why he got sent to the more hardcore hospital. Since he never actually attacked me or anything, he wasn't charged with a crime, and I have no idea how long he was held in the other hospital, but I'll be a happy man if I never run into him again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 263. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Those of you who follow me on Twitter will have noticed I tweeted something about reaction channels earlier. That is because it was recently brought to my attention by a subscriber that one of my videos has been reacted to, and these channels tend to just basically they sit down, watch the entirety of your video, and that's it. There's a number of reasons I don't like this sort of thing. Mostly it's because you haven't done anything creative there. You're using the whole thing. Fair use doesn't apply in this situation. But I've sent an email to the person who did it. I'm not going to name their channel, but I've sent an email to them. So hopefully they are polite enough to remove the video. And we'll see. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.